January 4th, 46, before Christ, North Africa. 3 miles outside a coastal camp called Ruspina, 9,000 Roman legionaries march in 30 understrength cohorts looking for grain. They do not find grain. They find 8,000 Numidian cavalry, 1,600 Gallic and Germanic horsemen, and thousands of light infantry. By sunset, Julius Caesar's force will be surrounded, battered, and bleeding. This is not a story of annihilation. This is a story of survival against mathematics that should have killed every man on that plain. BC, and preserved in the Loeb Classical Library edition published by Harvard University Press, and Adrian Goldsworthy's Caesar, Life of a Colossus, published by Yale University Press in 2006, which synthesizes archaeological evidence with ancient texts. Now back to the information. There were not 16,000 warriors in a single cohesive force. There was not an annihilation. The numbers do not work that way. The sources do not support it. What happened at Ruspina on January 4th was Caesar getting caught in the open by a mobile force 3 times his cavalry strength and being forced into a defensive circle where his men threw javelins at enemies they could not reach while projectiles rained down from all sides. He lost men. He failed his mission. He retreated. Some accounts say he lost 1/3 of his force killed or wounded. That is between 2,000 and 3,000 casualties in a single afternoon. That is not victory. That is barely survival. Carhaes in 53 BC proved it when Crassus lost 20,000 legionaries to Parthian horse archers. Bagratis River in 49 BC proved it again when Curio's entire force was destroyed by Numidian cavalry. Ruspina almost made it 3. Almost. The fact that Caesar kept 9,000 men together in a circle, rotated cohorts to face multiple directions, broke out twice, and walked back to camp with most of his army intact is the story. Not annihilation. Cohesion under fire when cohesion should have shattered. 3,500 men on a hostile coast in North Africa, where his enemies control 10 legions, 4 more under King Juba of Numidia, 120 war elephants, and thousands of cavalry. The garrison at Hadrumetum refuses to surrender. Caesar marches to Ruspina, sets up camp, waits for his scattered ships. 2 years earlier, in August 48 BC, Caesar crushed Pompey the Great at Pharsalus in Greece. Pompey fled to Egypt, got murdered on the beach by advisors of the boy King Ptolemy XIII. Caesar followed. Got dragged into the Alexandrian War, spent months besieged in the city fighting for Cleopatra against Ptolemy, then had to rush to Asia Minor in 47 BC to deal with Pharnaces, king of the Cimmerian Bosporus, son of Mithridates. The Great defeated him at Zela, sent back the famous message, Veni, vidi, vici, I came, I saw, I conquered. His most trusted officer in the Gallic Wars, the man who commanded Caesar's cavalry for 8 years, who knew every trick Caesar used, who switched sides at the start of the Civil War in 49 BC and now fought for the Republic against the man who made him famous. 120 elephants, thousands of light troops, and cavalry that outnumbers anything Caesar can field. They control the grain supply. They control the interior. They have fortified towns and strong points across the province. Caesar has a beachhead at Ruspina and scattered ships still arriving from Sicily. He gains elements of the 5th and 10th legions from ships that found their way to port, leaves 6 cohorts to garrison Leptis, returns to Ruspina January 2nd. By January 3rd, more ships arrive. His force now stands at approximately 30 cohorts of mixed quality. Some are veteran legionaries from his campaigns in Gaul. Most are newly raised troops with minimal training. Total strength around 9,000 infantry, 400 cavalry. 150 archers. Not enough food, not enough fodder for the horses. The land around Ruspina has been stripped bare by Scipio's forces. Caesar sends back to camp for his 400 cavalry and 150 archers. Then he waits to see what he faces. Archers forward to skirmish. Cavalry split between the 2 wings. Standard Roman response to a larger infantry force. Keep the line long. Do not let them wrap around you. Wait for them to close and hit them with pila at 20 paces. They are 8,000 Numidian light cavalry, 1,600 Gallic and Germanic heavy cavalry, and thousands of Numidian light infantry mixed into the formation. Caesar has been suckered into deploying against an enemy that will never close to javelin range. His 400 cavalry face nearly 10,000 horsemen. His infantry face an enemy that can ride circles around them, throwing javelins and shooting arrows from distances the legionaries cannot answer. 9,000 legionaries form into an orbis, a defensive ring, shields out, every man facing a different direction because the enemy is everywhere. The Romans bunch together for protection, makes them a denser target. Men start to fall, not in clean lines like a pitched battle, 1 here, 2 there, a javelin through a thigh, an arrow in the shoulder, deaths by mathematics, 9,000 targets in a circle, 10,000 attackers outside the circle with projectiles. Time multiplies the casualties. Close enough to taunt. He knows these men, fought beside them in Gaul. Now he mocks them, asks if they are afraid, asks where their courage went. A veteran of the 10th Legion steps forward. The 10th was in disgrace after a mutiny earlier in the war. This soldier has something to prove. He recognizes Labienus. Labienus recognizes him. The veteran throws his pilum. It hits Labienus's horse, wounds the animal. The veteran shouts, "That will teach you, Labienus, that a soldier of the 10th is attacking you." The man stays. The line holds. The sudden aggression scatters the nearest Numidians and light infantry. They are not built for close combat. They flee. The Romans pursue for a short distance, not far. Cannot risk breaking the formation. Cannot chase fast cavalry with heavy infantry. They pull back, start marching toward camp 3 miles away. Fresh troops. Caesar's men are exhausted, low on javelins. The new force hits the retreating column, forces them to turn, form up again, fight again. The legionaries form for a second breakout. They charge, drive the enemy back over higher ground. Petreius himself takes a wound in this clash. Both sides are spent, completely drained. Late afternoon sun, hours of fighting. Caesar's men withdraw in formation back to the fortified camp at Ruspina. Labienus does not pursue to the gates. His cavalry have been harassing all day. His light infantry have been skirmishing since mid-morning. He has no heavy infantry to assault a fortified position. He lets them go. Maybe 300 to 1,000 dead. The Bellum Africum does not give exact numbers. What is clear is that Caesar failed his objective. He got no grain. He got no supplies. He got his army mauled and had to retreat. Adrian Goldsworthy in Caesar, Life of a Colossus, published by Yale University Press in 2006, page 459, states, "The action outside Ruspina, it is sometimes described as a battle, was, without doubt, a defeat for Caesar, who had been prevented from his aim of gathering the supplies that his army required. That is from a respected military historian using primary sources. This was a defeat. Not an annihilation of the enemy, a defeat. Because the veterans of the 10th Legion, even in disgrace, still know how to hold formation. Because the cohort structure allows rapid redeployment. The Romans train to fight in multiple directions. They drill changing formation. They practice interlocking shields. These skills keep them alive when the mathematics say they should all die. Puts craftsmen to work making slingshots and javelins, sends messages to Sicily demanding grain and reinforcements. Metellus Scipio links up with Labienus and Petreius. They set up camp 3 miles from Caesar's position, form up for battle multiple times, trying to draw Caesar out. Caesar refuses. He has learned. He will not fight in open ground against superior cavalry again. He waits for his legions to arrive from Sicily. The broader Republican strength in early 46 BC is overwhelming. Scipio commands 8 legions. Juba has 4 more. That is approximately 40,000 heavy infantry versus Caesar's 9,000. The Republicans have 120 war elephants. Caesar has none. They have vast numbers of cavalry. Caesar has 400. They control the grain supply. Caesar is rationing. They have fortified bases inland. Caesar has 1 coastal town. By every measure, Caesar is outnumbered and trapped on the African coast. Caesar sends the high-ranking deserters back to their tribes with letters, asks them to raise troops, tells them not to listen to his enemies. With reinforcements, Caesar marches out again. This time he goes on the offensive, bypasses Ruspina, moves to capture hills that threaten Scipio's camp near Uzita. Scipio refuses battle. Caesar entrenches. Both sides settle into a standoff. Labienus had charged too far ahead of his main force with the Republican right-wing cavalry. Caesar sends his left-wing cavalry around to Labienus's rear, catches him in a pincer. Labienus's Numidian cavalry extracts itself. His Gallic and Germanic horsemen get surrounded and slaughtered. First real tactical victory for Caesar in the African campaign. He marches to Thapsis on the coast, besieges the city, builds a double line of fortifications around it. His fleet blockades from the sea. South of Thapsis is the marsh of Mochnine, leaves only 2 land approaches. Caesar fortifies the southern approach with 3 cohorts, forces Scipio to march around the marsh and attack from the east. Scipio divides his forces, sends Afranius and troops to face the southern fortifications. Camps Juba and Labienus with Numidian cavalry south of the marsh. Run through Scipio's formation. Complete chaos. Caesar's men overrun Afranius' camp. 10,000 Republican soldiers die. Many are killed trying to surrender. Caesar's legionaries ignore his orders for mercy. They remember Pharsalus. They remember the civil war. They want blood. When Sidius, a Roman mercenary commander working for King Bacchus of Mauritania, closes in on them, they commit suicide by dueling each other. Juba kills Petreius, then has a slave kill him. Honorable death by their standards. Cato the Younger commits suicide at Utica, reads Plato's Phaedo twice, runs himself through with a sword. When his servants find him and call a doctor, he tears out his own intestines to finish the job. Dies rather than ask Caesar for clemency. Afranius, who commanded at Thapsis, gets captured in Mauritania and executed. The African campaign is over. Caesar has crushed the last major Republican army. He spends April through June 46 BC consolidating control. Annexes Juba's Numidian kingdom as the new Roman province of Africa Nova. Leaves garrisons. Appoints governors. Sails back to Rome on June 13, 46 BC, less than 6 months in Africa. Came within hours of losing everything on January 4th at Ruspina. Ended by destroying an army that outnumbered him 4-1 at Thapsis. What happened was 9,000 legionaries getting surrounded by approximately 10,000 cavalry and thousands of light infantry, and barely escaping with most of their force intact. The lesson is in the barely, in the techniques that kept heavy infantry alive against mobile cavalry in open terrain. Even 10,000 horsemen will not charge into a solid wall of Roman shields and pila. The horses will not do it. They shy from the hedge of spear points. Cavalry needs infantry to pin the enemy line, so the horsemen can exploit gaps. Labienus has no heavy infantry at Ruspina. He has light troops who cannot and will not close with Caesar's legionaries, so he can encircle, he can harass, he can inflict casualties with missiles, but he cannot break the formation and kill them all. The discipline holds. One group engages while the other recovers, spreads the damage, prevents any single section from collapsing under focused fire. Buys time for Caesar to move his men toward the fortified camp. 9,000 infantry cannot cover enough ground to prevent encirclement by 10,000 cavalry. He gets lucky that his men hold formation, lucky that Labienus does not have heavy infantry to exploit the situation, lucky that Petreius wounds pull the Republicans back instead of pushing for complete destruction. Luck is not a plan. Physically turns him around, points at the enemy, shouts. It works because Caesar is Caesar. His soldiers know he has been in worse situations. They know he leads from the front. They know he shares their danger. When he tells them the enemy is over there and they need to fight, they believe him. Different commander, maybe the line breaks. Maybe the whole formation collapses and it becomes a massacre. But Caesar has spent 15 years in Gaul building that reputation. It saves him at Ruspina. Thapsis 3 months later shows what Caesar does with enough men. Chooses ground, uses fortifications to channel enemy, brings artillery, annihilates Republican army. Thapsis is annihilation, 10,000 dead. Total collapse. That is victory. Ruspina was the near disaster that taught caution. Plutarch mentions battle briefly. Dio claims heavy losses. 1/3 figure from secondary sources cannot be traced to primary texts with certainty. Modern historians suggest 300 to 1,000 dead with 500 to 2,000 wounded. Total 800 to 3,000 casualties. Not annihilation of enemy. Significant damage to Caesar's force. Mathematics certain. Caesar had 9,000. Labienus had 10,000 plus cavalry and light infantry. Force ratio favored Labienus 2-1. Caesar losing 1/10 and keeping his army together counts as success. Losing 1/3 and retreating counts as defeat, but not disaster. Zela lands in Africa. Ruspina happens January 46 BC. Thapsis April 46 BC. Munda March 45 BC. Rubicon to final victory 27 months. Caesar spends that time moving, fighting, marching, risking everything. Ruspina is one of few times he nearly loses. Can hurt and surround but not kill them all before night. Second, Labienus wants Scipio to get credit for defeating Caesar. Bellum Africum mentions Petreius withdrawing to not deprive Scipio of victory. Political calculation mid-battle. Let Scipio get glory. Do not take it yourself, though you have him trapped. That hesitation saves Caesar. Scipio never gets another chance. By the time he links up with Labienus, Caesar has fortified. More legions arrive. Force ratio shifts. Scipio forms for battle, trying to draw Caesar out. Caesar refuses, waits, gets stronger. By February, he marches on Thapsis and forces decisive engagement on his terms. Gets Caesar away from fortifications, isolates him, executes ambush correctly. Failure is exploitation. Having surrounded Caesar, Labienus lacks tools to finish, needs heavy infantry to grind down formation, does not have it. Battle becomes missile exchange that Caesar's training allows him to survive. Does not give us centurion names or cohort rosters or casualty breakdowns by unit. We know one Aquilifer panicked and Caesar stopped him. We know one veteran of the 10th Legion threw his pilum at Labienus' horse. We know Petreius took a wound. But the hundreds or thousands of legionaries who fell under Numidian javelins are anonymous. Their names are not carved in stone. Their families did not get death notifications with poetic flourishes. They died on a plain in North Africa, far from home fighting other Romans in a civil war that destroyed the republic they thought they were defending. Waits for the 13th and 14th legions to arrive from Sicily. When they land, he finally has enough strength to maneuver, but he remains cautious. Chooses positions near the coast, keeps supply lines open to his fleet, avoids pitched battles in open ground. The memory of January 4th keeps him careful until he has overwhelming advantage at Thapsis. Exploitation of terrain, use of cavalry to its maximum advantage, psychological warfare riding up to taunt enemy troops. He executes the battle well. His failure is not military, it is political. He defers to Scipio for credit, waits for permission to finish Caesar. By the time Scipio arrives, Caesar has fortified and the opportunity is gone. At Thapsis, 4 months later, Labienus cannot repeat the success. Caesar does not give him favorable ground, does not expose his infantry, forces the Republicans into a fortification assault where elephants and cavalry provide no advantage. Labienus survives Thapsis but loses the war, dies at Munda a year later, having been on the losing side at 3 major battles. No mass graves found, no weapon caches, no battlefield markers. Evidence comes from texts, Bellum Africum written by officer present, later sources like Plutarch and Dio decades or centuries after. Modern historians work backwards trying to reconstruct. Maps, speculative. Casualty counts, estimates. Troop positions, educated guesses. What survives is a narrative shape. Caesar surrounded, Caesar escaping, Caesar learning. The counterfactual question haunts Ruspina. What if Labienus had heavy infantry to support his cavalry? What if Petreius had arrived earlier with his reinforcements instead of after Caesar's first breakout? What if Caesar's Aquilifer had run and started a panic? What if the 10th Legion had broken instead of holding? Any of those changes and Caesar dies or gets captured on January 4th, 46 BC. No Thapsis, no Munda, no dictatorship. No assassination on the Ides of March 44 BC. Cato, the Younger, restores the Republic or tries to. Labienus becomes a celebrated general. Cleopatra loses her Roman ally, and Egypt loses its independence earlier. Octavian remains an unknown teenager. Augustus never exists. The Roman Empire looks completely different or does not exist as we know it. One battle, one afternoon, one decision by Labienus to defer to Scipio. Changes everything. But history does not work on counterfactuals. What happened is that Caesar survived, learned, adapted, won the African campaign, returned to Rome, became dictator for life, got assassinated anyway, triggered another civil war, led to his adopted son Octavian becoming Augustus and founding the empire. Ruspina is a footnote in that story, a near miss. A day when Caesar almost lost, but the combination of training, discipline, personal leadership, and enemy hesitation kept his legionaries alive long enough to retreat. At Thapsis, Adrian Goldsworthy, in his 2006 biography, states clearly that it was a defeat. Modern sensationalism wants to call it an annihilation, wants to claim 1,000 veterans destroyed 16,000 warriors. The evidence does not support that story. The evidence supports 9,000 legionaries getting trapped by 10,000 cavalry and thousands of light infantry, losing hundreds or thousands of men, and barely. Escaping in formation through tactical adaptation and command presence. What saves him is not genius, not luck alone, but the foundational Roman military virtues, discipline under fire, cohesion when encircled, training that allows rapid formation changes, and soldiers who trust their commander enough to stand when every instinct says run. Throw javelins at enemies they cannot reach, take casualties from missiles they cannot stop, rotate their cohorts, charge when ordered, break out twice, march 3 miles back to camp with their standards held high and their formation intact. Not annihilation, survival. Sometimes survival is the victory. It is a drill they practice. Outer ranks present shields, inner ranks pass javelins forward. The formation breathes, contracts under heavy fire, expands for counterattacks, rotates to present fresh shields. A static circle collapses. A dynamic orbis holds. Caesar's men hold from mid-morning to late afternoon, 5 or 6 hours under attack. Training proves itself. A circle presents the same surface regardless of density. A longer line presents more frontage, harder for attackers to concentrate fire. When every second cohort faces backward, you create 2 fronts. Enemy cannot focus harassment on one side. Must split forces. Reduces effective fire. Buys time. Not perfect, but it works. The legionaries execute it without falling apart. That is the key. Crassus leads 7 legions against Parthian horse archers. 20,000 legionaries die. Bagratus River in 49 BC. Curio's 4 legions get destroyed by Numidian cavalry. Both times mobility beats heavy infantry in open terrain. Ruspina should be the 3rd example. Same enemy, same tactics, different outcome because Caesar stops panic, his veterans have experience, and Labienus' horse gets wounded at a critical moment. Small things change outcomes. Plutarch, writing in the 1st century AD, mentions Ruspina briefly, emphasizes danger from cavalry superiority, does not give casualty numbers. Cassius Dio in the 2nd and 3rd centuries claims heavy losses, uses subjective terms, no exact counts. Modern historians work from these texts, plus military analysis. Adrian Goldsworthy's Caesar, Life of a Colossus, published 2006, argues Ruspina was a defeat because Caesar failed his aid. Objective, but not catastrophic because the army survived. That middle ground fits the sources. Public perception matters more than private knowledge. Rarely defeats formed legions head-on. Exception is open terrain where mobility dominates weight. Ruspina offers that terrain. Labienus exploits it. But even at peak effectiveness, Numidian cavalry cannot break Caesar's formation. Can only damage and harass. Infantry remain decisive, just disadvantaged this time. Not because of ideology, but because commanders chose different sides in a power struggle. Legionaries follow generals. Generals follow ambition. 9,000 men risk death for Caesar's political career. The tragedy is clear. Necessary perhaps, but not glorious. Years of practice required. Rome hires Numidian cavalry as auxiliaries because they excel at harassment. At Ruspina, they fight against Rome. Their effectiveness validates Roman respect for their skills. By late January, he has doubled his strength. The opportunity to crush Caesar passes unused. Republicans pay for that hesitation at Thapsis. For Caesar, it is the moment he realizes Labienus is as dangerous as Pompey. For Labienus, it is proof he can match Caesar tactically, but not finish him politically. Caesar's counter is to survive long enough to change parameters, get more men, better ground, fortifications, then force enemy to fight on his terms. At Thapsis, he has all advantages. Republicans attack fortifications where cavalry provides no benefit. Battle becomes infantry versus infantry. Caesar's training proves decisive. Cannot know the fear of watching men drop with arrows. Cannot know the exhaustion of holding a shield overhead for hours. Soldiers who survive do not write memoirs. They are not literate. They march and fight and die. Officers write dispatches that become sources. The lived reality vanishes. Individual legionaries who held formation remain nameless. Men dying there do not know it. They think victory will restore order. It will not. Regardless of who wins, the Republic is dead. Caesar winning leads to dictatorship and Augustus. Republicans winning would produce another strongman eventually. Structural problems require structural solutions. Military force cannot fix them. Ruspina is one afternoon in that longer dying. One moment when Caesar almost falls, but he does not. History continues toward empire. No annihilation. A defeat. Caesar failed his mission. Lost men, retreated, survived. That is truth, documented and sourced. Any claim beyond is speculation. Does not claim certainty where ambiguity exists. History becomes propaganda when facts bend. Remains history when evidence shapes conclusions. Tactical sequences differ, but outcome is consistent. Caesar survives. Republic dies. Ruspina is one more step. Not decisive, not catastrophic. Another battle where Romans kill Romans. We read history now. Question it, verify it. Refuse sensationalized claims without evidence. That service we owe the dead. Tell their story accurately. Ruspina was not annihilation. It was desperate escape. Sometimes that is harder, sometimes more impressive. Sometimes survival against odds matters more than victory. This is one of those times.